Government's whole reason for being, in the American system anyway, is to protect the people of the United States, keeping our system of government and our way of life intact in the process. Permanent Washington has been arrayed against our people, courtesy of Barack Obama, the instrument of indignity in his own regime and in Joe Biden's regime as well. But what if the anti-American infection has spread far beyond the unelected bureaucrats who bleed our country dry and neglect their most basic duties? What if our elected ruling class is also a driving force leading to the nation's downfall? Trust me, government, the end of us all. That's what we explore in today's preamble. Since the disgraceful debt ceiling deal was passed, our government has burned through $1 trillion. You know, it's hard to imagine spending that kind of money and having so little to show for it. A growing chunk of our tax dollars going to finance our $32 trillion debt, a debt recklessly and irresponsibly foisted upon us by our ruling class. Not only is our interest payment fast approaching $1 trillion a year, it's only going to get worse as our political class spends like there's no tomorrow. And judging by their recent conduct, at this rate, there might not be a tomorrow. In what many pro-American patriots called an act of betrayal, the GOP and the U.S. Senate backed Joe Biden and the Democrat Party's spending priorities in that $1.85 trillion non-budget omnibus deal. Here are the betrayers who threw caution and fiscal sanity to the wind in order to placate Joe Biden's destructive and juvenile spending. Now, many of you might be asking, what did the GOP get out of this deal? Well, Mitch McConnell told us.
Making sure the Defense Department can deal with the major threats coming from Russia and China, providing assistance for the Ukrainians to defeat the Russians. That's the #1 priority for the United States right now, according to most Republicans. That's sort of how we see the challenges confronting the country at the moment.
Republicans, claimed Mitch McConnell, have as their top priority joining hands with Democrats in sending money and warfighting capability to Ukraine. Now, indeed, Ukraine is a country that provides 92% of the high-grade neon used in advanced microchip production. So America did have a vital strategic interest in Ukraine. But now we have not only had it alleged, but confirmed that Joe Biden, the Democrats, Mitch, and 17 other Senate GOP luminaries, not to mention some culprits from the GOP House, have depleted America's munitions reserves to the point where we can't defend ourselves. Colonel Tony Shaffer detailed the problem last Friday on this show.
We've had 41 draws from our military ready reserves that are supposed to be prepared for us to use in a contingency. Those military equipment and weapons went to Ukraine. So the very time that we're seeing the Chinese acting more aggressively, the Chinese are very much aware of our depletion of resources. So this is a very dangerous situation.
Colonel Shaffer tells me that we can't replace the munitions fast enough. And at this rate, all production is being sent to Ukraine rather than going to replenish American stockpiles. The colonel's allegations were backed up by Joe Biden himself this weekend.
We're in a situation where Ukraine continues to be brutally attacked across the board by munitions, by these cluster munitions that have dud rates that are very, very low, I mean, very high, that are dangerous to civilians, number one. Number two, the Ukrainians are running out of ammunition. The ammunition that they call them 155 millimeter weapons. This is a war relating to munitions, and they're running out of that ammunition, and we're low on it.
Okay, it's one thing for your liberty-loving Latino and former members of the U.S. military to sound the alarm about low munition stockpiles for the U.S. military. It's quite another for Joe Biden to admit it on national television. As is usually the case, Joe Biden has managed to anger everybody, Conservatives are angry at old Joe because he just told America's enemies that we have a diminished capacity to defend ourselves, many saying that's a breach of national security. Democrats and colluding Republicans are angry at Joe about Biden admitting to the American people that the majority of elected Washington has imperiled us all with their reckless policies, leaving our nation virtually defenseless. You heard Joe Biden there mention cluster bombs. Cluster bombs are munitions, one of the few we have left, that are designed to indiscriminately kill large groups of people and destroy equipment. They are banned in over 100 countries. In fact, Russia threatened to use them. And as you heard, Biden is accusing them of doing just that. Now, that threat led to Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy to tweeting, quote, "Using cluster bombs is a war crime. Those responsible for their use, even if following orders, will be held accountable. Russia's generals need to defy such orders," end quote. Wow, that tweet didn't age very well, did it? Now, the leaders of the Democrats, with the full support of at least 16 current Senate Republicans with their omnibus votes, are getting ready to deploy U.S.-made cluster bombs to Ukraine because it's all we have left. And now, no tweets from Republicans about deploying cluster bombs being a war crime. Kind of odd, don't you think? But don't look to the biased press to inform the folks of these troubling developments. They are focused on Joe Biden's trip to the UK to meet with their diminished monarchy. You know, I miss the grace and moral clarity of Queen Elizabeth, don't you? And a great gift to see ourselves as others see us. Niall Gardner of the UK Telegraph shows us what the Brits think about our compromised occupier of the Oval Office in a piece titled, "Here Comes Biden, the World's Worst Diplomat." Niall writes, quote, "No president in modern American history has done more to undermine the partnership with the UK. His shameless knifing of Defense Secretary Ben Wallace's candidacy to be the next NATO Secretary General was classic ruthlessness from Mr. Biden, who can barely disguise his sheer hatred of Britain, Brexit, and British history," end quote. Niall continued his dressing down of Biden. Quote, "Biden is a president who exudes incredible arrogance while demonstrating a limited understanding of many foreign policy issues. Combined with a series of embarrassing gaffes, his presidency has been a monumental disaster on the world stage, from the catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan through his shameless groveling towards communist China. Britain has nothing to learn from Biden's foreign policy. Biden has been his own worst enemy, and his version of international diplomacy is taking a wrecking ball to America's most valued partnerships and alliances," end quote. Gee, you know, that sounds exactly like what the biased press was claiming about President Trump. Turns out the facts are a far cry from the press narrative over news, that Joe Biden is somehow respected abroad. The exact opposite is true. In fact, abroad, Joe Biden is more reviled than he is here at home. And abroad, the only people who love Joe Biden are the ones who hate America, just like here at home. Right now, the United States is reduced to our broadest of swords, our nuclear deterrent. Now, that certainly gives nation states pause when they think about trying a direct attack on the United States of America. So what are Mitch and Joe up to by taking away America's ability to fight through the inclusion of CRT and the DIE programs in the military, and also removing our conventional munitions? Well, it all comes back to what I believe are Joe and Mitch's favorite country, China. While America's military suffers from a lack of recruitment and unit cohesion, not to mention munitions to fight with, China's dictator Xi Jinping is telling his military to prepare for war. The Brits turned over Hong Kong without firing a shot, and millions lost their freedom. I believe that's precisely what America's politicians have colluded to do with Taiwan. When China makes its move to subjugate Taiwan, something they're going to do very soon, a free nation, Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell will lock arms and credibly tell the American people we're not strong enough to defend Taiwan. And millions more will lose their freedom to the Red Menace. A deal that I suspect was worked out between American negotiators and China's apparatchiks. And as the worldwide left attacks the foundations of the West, our Judeo-Christian tradition, communist leaders will be assured that our eventual surrender will be voluntary, because our political class would have worked to bankrupt us spiritually, militarily, and financially. And now you might have a window as to why so many in our political class, from Paul Ryan to Bill Kristol, from George Conway to Mitt Romney, from John Weaver to John Cornyn, bristle at the slogan, America First.